But this idea of storytelling, it wasn't really defined until I heard Matt Wagner, and he was at Golden Apple in Hollywood. And I went to like kind of go support. He was going to give a talk. So like somebody in the crowd asked him like, hey, you write and you draw. What do you like better? What do you think you're better at? And Matt's like, look, I'm not the best writer and I'm not the best artist. But I found that when I put the two together, I'm a really good storyteller. And like that right there was like somebody like took a 2x4 and hit me in the head. And I was like, holy that's totally it. I don't have to be the best artist and I don't have to be the best writer, but I do need to work this magic trick in a way where you don't look at my art so long that you're picking it apart and you're not thinking about the story so much that you're enjoying the art.
Wow. This is the Inkpulp podcast. Welcome to the Inkpulp podcast.
Hello.
I'm here with my co-host brother Mattteo, the dumb shark himself, Scalera. What's up, Mattteo?
Hello, brother. Nothing
And
special.
here-
Just tired.
No, just
Tired. But yeah.
You ready for my arrival?
Oh yeah, absolutely. When it's gonna be like another week, right?
Yeah, a week from Sunday is when you're coming to see me, right?
It's awesome, man. You excited?
Perfetto. Oh, dude. Yeah. I'll tell you, after we're done recording, I'll tell you all the shit that's going on here. I have a massive water leak right now. There's a lake forming in front of my house.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it sucks, dude. But we'll get there.
You've got to have your own Lake Como.
Right.
In front of your house.
I'm gonna need a ferry, so come on over. We'll build a ferry, and we'll be good. We also have my other brother, Jim Mahfood, in the house.
What's up, guys?
What up, Jim?
What up?
Today's very special guest, I'm thrilled to have him on because I've been a fan since way back in the Oni days. Scott Morse.
What's up, everybody?
Hell yes.
Hey, man.
It is-
Thanks for joining us. It's
Thanks
a
for
pleasure.
having me. This is so cool. The podcast has been so much fun to like work to, listen to, educate
awesome.
myself to, always be
you.
a student of. Yeah.
Thank you.
Especially now that Eric is not here with us. I bet it's way more enjoyable now.
I won't confirm or deny. I don't want to.
People are leaving comments like, where's Eric? Like, it's becoming a thing.
After
And
10 episodes without him, people are starting to notice his absence.
Should
Well,
I have just put Eric Canetti in my like?
Oh,
and I could have just. What's up? And just-
No, because you're smiling, and it never would have worked.
Oh, but it could be like a
That's
weird
not
Hitchcock
Eric.
moment of like, what? Who is that guy? What? I've always been Eric.
But to be fair, Eric would like do like 4 episodes and then not be on one, and then he would like miss a few here and there. So yeah, it took a little while, but I think people are starting to.
He's like
on.
Kramer. Just sliding in.
Oh, hey guys. Scott, have you seen the remember the have you seen him, the animal chin thing from like 1986, Powell Peralta skateboards?
Yep.
Have you seen Shawn made a have you seen him with Eric's face cut and pasted on the animal chin artwork? It's a very deep cut, like only like 47-year-old people would understand it, but it's incredible. Jamie can show it right now on screen.
Yeah,
later.
Jamie, pull it up. And for all the fans of the podcast, if you're at New York Comic Con, I have them as free giveaways. So stop by the table and grab one for yourself. I made stickers of
Sean,
them.
I don't know. Are they going to be stickers?
Yeah, I have them. You want?
Okay,
Let me
okay.
go grab them. They're right over here.
Awesome.
Sean.
Jim's got it.
Oh,
Okay. So I don't
Have
know
you
if
seen
that
him?
would be promoting vandalism or stuff, but we should suggest people to stick it all around the city.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. just slappers. Slap them
Yeah.
on the lampposts. Also, Mattteo, you like this. So I did the temporary tattoo experiment at Dragon Con, and I have a bunch. I ordered a lot, and they're fine. They're okay. Like, they work fine, but it's a little bit of a pain in the ass. People got to like put water on it. So I just ordered 500 buttons because those we can just pass out.
Those people
So
can just
funny.
stick straight into their skin.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it'll be
exactly.
fine.
Yeah, it's like a piercing, right?
Yeah.
So stop by the table. We got a bunch of free stuff for you guys, and yeah, so that'll be good. But
That's
so
awesome.
so I'm excited to have Scott on today. I mean, Scott, amazing comic book artist. Also, how long did you spend at Pixar?
Almost 20 years. Yeah.
Damn.
Long time.
Holy
That's-
cow.
So we'll
way
talk
longer
about
than
that.
Yeah, I mean, just to dispel like how studios work and gigs at studios, you guys have probably talked about this, and I know you've dealt with it on some level. Most studios don't employ you. Like, they don't bring you on as an employee of the studio. They'll, like, if you work for Warner Brothers, typically you're not working for Warner Brothers. You're working on a show at Warner Brothers. You're working for that show.
Right.
And when that show's done, it's understood you're done. Warner Brothers isn't
Right.
going to like keep sending you, Christmas bonuses and things because you worked at Warner Brothers at one point. Pixar's different. Pixar, because of where they were located or are located up in Northern California, they always were under the working rules of kind of hiring people full time and carrying them from project to project. So you worked for Pixar. You didn't work on Wall-E. I mean, I did work on Wall-E, but then I was between projects and then worked on another movie. And between projects, worked on another movie. And they pay you to keep you up there. There's not many. Part of the reason is they were looking to entice people to move to the Bay Area from LA, which is, for anybody that's not in California and doesn't know those distances, it's, 350 miles. So you can't really commute. Whereas most of the studios in LA, you can commute, so they tried to get people to move up to Northern California. And because they're one of the only games in town up here, besides ILM and some of the game companies and Tippett and, smaller companies that have popped up, they wanted people to feel safe. So 20 years later, people feel less safe because they invited, 200 of us to leave. So that's fine. And it's just a shift. A lot of people that were part of this group that's recently left have only ever worked at Pixar, and they don't have the context for the gig hustle, right? You guys have that context because that's comics. That's all we do is hustle from gig to gig to gig, talking to publishers, talking to editors, talking to writers, artists, like your mom. Like, does Uncle Jimmy want to give me, $10,000 to publish my comic? Like that's how it works. And most animation honestly kind of works that way too. But Pixar was different. So it's been a little bit of a shift. I'm having to readjust after 20 years to like putting myself back in that mindset of full-time hustle. I never really stopped, but working at Pixar for 20 years, I did, my comics work dropped off. Like I had a big fan base before I went up there, and then I started making movies, and that's a very different fan base. Like arguably I had hundreds of thousands more fans, but they don't know who I am. I'm Pixar, to them, I was Pixar artist. Maybe Pixar artist Scott Morse, but I wasn't Scott Morse. So like the trick is to get back into being Scott Morse.
Do you feel like when working in an animation studio and on movies and stuff, you're more of a cog in the machine as opposed to like in comics, you're an individual?
Yes and no. I mean, it's very clear. It's clearly delineated that you work with a team in animation and movies and comics, right? Or not comics, movies, TV. You're part of a team. It's not a 1 or 2 or 3 person team. It's a 300 or 400 person team. At a studio, it's a 1,200 person team. So like you get used to being part of a bigger group like that. And you are a little bit more, I don't want to say disposable. Everybody there is kind of unique. And Pixar, I'm not going to disparage anybody that works there. They're some of the most incredible artists and writers and thinkers on the face of the earth. So one reason to work there, one reason I went up there was to constantly be learning, right? Constantly be a student of the people around me. Everyone around me was better than me. And they were learning from me at the same time. So it was a really great environment for that. So you never really feel like a cog if you don't let yourself feel like a cog.
I understand.
Mhm.
Yeah. I guess what I meant was like in comics, like when you put out a book, everyone can see you, like your
Yes.
work. But when you work on a movie, it's like it's a conglomerate of a whole bunch of people. So there's no individualism in the style or look of anything.
Yeah. So there is and there isn't. I mean, there have been opportunities, and very early for me at Pixar in a way that most people at Pixar have never experienced. I can point at the screen and say I did that. Of the joke is that you can sit in a movie theater during the premiere next to your mom or your wife or your kid, and they'll lean over and be like, "Did you do that?" Like a funny, everybody will laugh. Did you do that? And it's like, well,
Yeah.
as a story artist, I was in the room when we came up with that joke, and I might have said something that led to that joke. And
Right.
keep watching
Yeah.
the movie because I'm talking now. You're asking me if I didn't do the thing you just looked at. Like I literally didn't do the thing you just looked at, but as part of the, like you can taste that flavor in the soup, right? I like my spices
Right.
in there, but like,
Oh, I like that. That's a good analogy.
so you have to think of it kind of that way, that you're an ingredient as part of a bigger team like that.
That
But
makes sense.
But that said, I was the designer on the end credits for Wall-E. I painted on the end credits for Ratatouille. So like you can see my paintings, you can see my drawings
Nice.
when you
I
look
love
at those end
paintings.
credits. Like that stuff's, those are literally my drawings, like some of that stuff.
Oh, that's amazing.
And most people at Pixar don't have that.
Right.
Mhm.
So when Pixar like was early on, like around the Nemo days and then Wall-E, like around that time, I saw them as this real creative mecca where, like you said, they had some of the best artists and thinkers on the planet there. But I also heard through grapevines and stuff that they encouraged you to do your own little short films and would allow you the space and time to do those. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, all the way up till now. Like I've, well, not now anymore, but a few months ago, they were very protective of that sort of culture, like from very high up, from the leadership level. The thinking being, and this is different thinking than most studios, like, and I'll give them a lot of credit for this. The thinking being, if you're pushing yourself on your own, doing things above what they hired you to do, that's free training for them. And you're going to bring that experience. You're going to bring a type of experience to what you're doing that other people haven't been afforded. Right. If I've made a short film on my own, if I've done a book, if I've done 20 books on my own, that's something I might have to wait in line to do at Pixar, like to make a film. But on my own, I don't have to wait in line. So I get all that experience of how to start from the very beginning with the writing and the design, all the way through pipeline of like creating shots, through sound mixing, through, recording, all that, working with actors, maybe like all that stuff, all the way through final frames. And then even promoting it, like getting it into a festival, getting it out into the world, selling it for distribution. Like those are all aspects of 100 different jobs at Pixar that now I have context for. And it makes me their thinking is that makes anybody a more valuable thinker at work because they have experience in very specific, arenas that they wouldn't have had otherwise. So it makes them that much more unique, that much more valuable.
Did you finish your own short in your time there?
No, not my time there. I mean, I did little things on the side. Like I started building puppets. Like there's weird ass puppets and things back here behind me.
Love those
you'll
puppets.
see back there.
Love them.
Yeah.
They're all
I'm a
mid
fan.
stages of whatever. And I developed a lot of like projects and shopped them around. I sold a TV show, live action TV show. This is all while I was at Pixar.
Wow.
I was still doing books, produced Trickster, the big event at Comic-Con 10 years ago or 12 years ago, whenever that was.
We're going to get into
We got to
that.
talk about that.
We're going to get into that in a minute. Yeah, that's
Right
going
on.
to be the bulk of what we talk about. But yeah, that's
yeah, I mean, people have started like their own shop that they have like on the side at Pixar. I mean, like an actual brick and mortar. People have had like crazy stuff. There's one employee there making bitters for like cocktails at one point, like selling those, like all kinds of stuff. Like people, it's an incredible place for that. Like kind of this cornucopia of just creativity.
so early on. It was a pretty inspiring and amazing experience, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I mean, you can be in the mindset that it was inspiring all the way up to the end, you know, and amazing all the way up into the end. Those words come with a bias of being optimistic a lot of the time, but you can be inspired by negative things. You can be
right. Okay. That's a good attitude.
So
I want to say real quick, speaking of Scott's puppets, like just to set things up for people watching, like when I met Scott in like 97, 98, Scott was like one of the only comic book artists I had met that had all these other things going on. So Oni Press had just started and Scott was already doing this book, Little Gray Man. I saw his work before I met him at Little Gray Man was at Image. And then he had joined up with Bob Schreck and all of us at Oni when Oni started and was doing, wait, Scott, Soulwind was also at Image, right?
Soulwind was at Image, but then we jumped it and brought it over to finished it at Oni. The first thing I did at Oni was
Oni double feature,
Volcanic Revolver, and Oni double feature.
Oh,
so
yeah,
it was.
Dude, I've got all these books right behind me.
Yeah.
But you were, I mean, even at that time, we were all super young, but you were living in LA and you were doing comics, but you were also working in animation and you had this film background in painting and studying under the legend Maurice Noble, who's an animation god, and all these things. And I was just kind of this kid from the Midwest who had just moved to Arizona, and Spaghetti Western is one of them. And so to all of us, like the original Oni crew, like Troy Nixie, China Clugston, Andy Watson, all these people, Scott was sort of like the renaissance man of this crew because he was doing all these other things. And to me, I was like, how are you doing all this other stuff? Like, how did you figure all this out? So he was a good example of like just being a freelance artist or creative person. It wasn't just comics. It was like comics and like 10 other things that are going on.
So did that shape you, meeting Scott, Jim? Like open your mind to doing because you've done a lot of different things.
Yeah, for sure. I just so happened to luck into, I was doing comics, but then through music stuff in Arizona, I started doing flyers for bands and album covers. So I started getting, but it was primarily rooted in pen and ink, black and white drawing. Scott was like doing black and white comics, but also painting and making short films and music, and then started like, making puppets, and then was the first guy. We would always set up at San Diego Comic-Con together, and Scott to me was the first guy who was like, I'm going to just start making paintings as my commissions live on the table in front of people. And all the other artists were like, what? Paintings? This is madness. This is crazy.
This is alchemy.
And then he bumped his prices up to like $100 for a commission, which at that time was also like, this is new territory. Because the rest of us were doing $20 marker commissions on the back of a backing board. Like that was what we did at shows. And Scott set up this process of like laying down illustration board and just painting all these backgrounds at once, and then painting characters with layers of color. And it was like this magic trick that no one else had really done before.
I got to jump in on you for a second there, because we would set up at tables, and before the painting, like when we were doing our drawings, and the $100 for it, like that I actually got from you to like bump up the prices, because we would sit at tables and like we would do Ape or whatever, and it'd be $20, and like we'd have a line. There's no way we could possibly finish everything we were doing, and then like the next day or the next show, you would like stop me and be like, "Hey, dude, what if we just listen to me? What if we charge $25? Like I'm going to charge 20. I think I'm going to charge $25, dude. And I'm like, I think 20. And you're like, no, dude. Cause if you charge 20 and I charge 25, I look like a dick. So like, you're going to have like, I think we should all just raise our price. So then the next show, it was like, 40? Do we do 40? 40? I think it's $60 of it. And then like, so it kept jumping. And then like when it was the painted stuff, I was like, well, this is a whole nother medium. And you know, like let's elevate it a little bit and jump it.
Yeah.
But like you were the one that was like, bump up the prices. And even now, like getting back into it and doing commissions, I still don't know what to charge for commissions. Like people are coming up to me and going, hey, can you do these sketch covers or can you do whatever? And I'm like, Sure. And I feel like it's 20 years ago, the prices that I'm charging.
Oh yeah. Things
Oh
have
my
gone
God.
way up. It's
Things have changed.
Yeah.
Just ask Matteo.
So Scott, so I understand that's a thing that I wanted to ask you earlier. So you're still doing shows, even though you haven't been working on new books while you're working at Pixar. You're still doing shows.
I would show up every now and then. I got to the point where Comic-Con is easy. San Diego Comic-Con is always easy because Alan Spiegel Fine Arts, Alan was my rep for a long time. He passed away last year, and his nephew Scott Zobak is taking over now. So they have the booth. We have that booth every year. And Alan actually, when Jim and I would sit together, we had the booth on the other side of the curtain from Alan at San Diego Comic-Con. So we were one big island. Yeah. So they pay for that they've been paying for that booth for every year. So they've been grandfathered in. So I have a spot to sit. I'm very, very fortunate when it comes to Comic-Con. So I've always got a spot there. So I can show up for a couple days. I can show up for an hour. I can show up for 4 days or whatever it is, and have a spot. Other conventions, unless I'm a guest, I typically won't go. And I have been here and there. There's a few local shows that I'll go to and kind of set up, but most of the time I'm kind of doing like what Mignola's doing now, I think, where you just like show up and walk around and not like you're there, but you're not there. So yeah, even at Pixar, I was still trying to be present because I love, we love comics. It's in our blood. We're going to keep doing it till we're old men. And I can't not be there. There's the weird fear of missing out if you don't show up to a convention. Like, what happened? Did I missed it? Like, right. But then honestly, sometimes I'll show up at shows now. This is a little bit of a tangent, but like I'll show up at shows and I actually get kind of depressed walking around because I feel like I'm just at a Hot Topic, like looking at a bunch of or like
we've talked about that a lot.
A weird Ren fair where people have like made 3D printed necklaces and things like. Yeah. It's all cool. Like, that's fine. But like at the same time, I'm just like, what has happened?
Yeah.
It's strange.
It's
we
like
often talk about, Emerald City Comic Con that like in a matter of like 3 years has entirely changed. It used to be one of our favorite shows ever. And all of a sudden is what you mentioned, basically.
That was when the Demonakos brothers were running it. That's when, exactly. So like,
yeah, it was great when Jim had it.
Yeah, that was I loved going to that show. We had some awesome times in Seattle, but I haven't been back there in a long time. I'm interested in Rose City. Like that just happened last weekend, and that sounds like it might be similar to what Emerald City. No, maybe not. All right. I don't know.
I never been to that one. So.
Rose City, it's like the thing. Rose City is Fan Expo. Is that correct?
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Is it fan? I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Or is it independent?
Shit, I don't know. That's a good question.
It feels like a Fan Expo show, I think. I could be wrong about that. But these corporations came in and bought up these conventions, and you've got Reed, Pop, and Fan Expo, and that's what's led to where we are now with this like flea market thing. The whole Comic-Con experience with those companies is very little to do with comic books now.
Yeah. I mean, flea market's a funny word though, because like there is a local show here in the Bay Area. The Berkeley Comics Show is what they call it. It's in Berkeley. It takes place in like a high school cafeteria, like once every 3 months or something. For comics, it's a low turnout, but all they have is old comics. I mean, it's just like boxes of old comics.
Yeah. See, I love that. That's my shit right there. I love that.
That's all they have. So like I'll go and nobody knows me. I walk around. I think Felix Comic Art sets up there as well. So Felix is there sometimes selling originals and things. But and CGC is there. Like they'll set up because it's like old comics. So they're getting like this flea market crowd of old men with their coffee shuffling around trying to sell their, or trade their old comic. But like I had a really beat up copy of Avengers #3. Like when Jim was here, like we went through all the comics that we had, and I had 2 Avengers #3s, like from the 60s. And this one copy was in bad shape. It looked like a rat had chewed up the bottom corner of it. I'm like, I'm just going to go see if I can trade this. And I found this old hippie dude, like literally this kind of burned out hippie who was like, ooh, what do you have there? What do you have? And he had like this really beautiful copy of Swamp Thing #1, and he's like, this is like minty mint, like he would call it minty mint. I'm like, wow, you're using words like you have a whole different rating system than me. I don't even know how you got there, but I'm like, what would you give me for this event? Like if I want that, he's like, I don't know, you just want to trade? I'm like, yeah,
that's awesome.
I felt like I was at a flea market, like it was awesome, and I ended up with my awesome Swamp Thing #1.
That show is how often, Scott? Once a year?
Maybe every 3 months, every 4 months.
Oh,
yeah, something
wow.
like that. Yeah, they do it fairly often up here. And they tend to, I mean, there's a lot of the same people, but like they'll shuffle what they're putting up and what's for sale. The crazy thing is the prices on that stuff. Like Bay Area prices for books are very different than prices like I went to C2E2. And that was a bigger Chicago show, and it's Chicago, so it's a big city. Their prices were still a little cheaper than Berkeley, and they were more than they needed to be. Like you could, like I'll typically walk around with like eBay out and like just check, like,
what is
this price on this book? Like everybody's overcharging.
Yeah, it's a weird inflated market right now, and like original art prices have skyrocketed in the last 5 years, and all of us are probably charging more for commissions these days, but that's just to stay competitive. But it's weird because like each artist just has to figure out the value of their work and put it out there and be like, I guess this is what I'm charging. Like, we'll see. Mattteo and Shawn both work with Essential Sequential, Jason. And I mean, I'm assuming Jason helps you guys figure out pricing and knows the market, but it is this weird kind of free for all of like this year, like original art sales are sort of down compared to last year. Like last year, people had more money from 2020 still. And then this year it's like slowed down just a little bit. Like I've noticed my original art sales at shows this year have slowed down a little bit compared to last year. So when I go to New York next month, New York is always my #1 show. That's really going to show me like, where are my original art sales right now? Like how well am I doing? Because that's the show where high rollers come out and really buy art, you know.
Mattteo, have you seen a slowdown on your end on anything?
I don't know. I don't know, to be honest with you, especially because now, like one of the biggest revenue was commissions at shows. And now since I'm not doing a lot of shows, I take like also commissions to be shipped out after the show.
Right.
So I don't have a huge parameter of, you know, how much money I'm waiting for, you know, for New York Comic Con to have a better idea. But going back to what Jim was saying, like nothing compares to 2020, because despite the fact that COVID was horrible in terms of original art sales, like it was incredible because people weren't going anywhere. So they had all this money, and especially they had the extra money that they saved for trip and food and hotels. So they were, I was selling basically, I'm not saying every day, but at least 2 original pages or 3 every week.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that was amazing.
But it's sort of a false positive. I mean, like that's kind of what I'm realizing now with pricing just in general on a lot of things. And even like work in animation, like looking for a job, looking for books, looking at publishers that are publishing, things like that. Like it's all pulled back. Everything's kind of clenched up after the pandemic, after, you know, lockdown and all that stuff. I think the economy is just at a point where we had this kind of like spike in people with extra funds that could kind of spend.
Right.
And then now people are kind of readjusting, and it's probably an overcorrection. And then I bet next year it'll kind of find a new mid range.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
That's
probably.
good.
Yeah.
Right. Shawn, according to my analytics, your thumbnails are one of the highest in demand items on the internet. What have you got to say about that?
Jim, funny you should say that. I have a gift for everyone in the Inkpulp community. A free PDF of some of my thumbnails as Jim said, which are in high demand. Also, I'm giving you a new home, the home of craft, the official home of the Inkpulp community, inkpulp.tv. A place where you can learn about the craft of comics, engage with the community, receive special offers, and so much more. In order to get your free PDF, head to Inkpulp TV, sign up for the newsletter. This is just the beginning of so many wonderful things to come. Thank you. Keep craft alive. So, Scott, are you, now that you're not at Pixar, are you looking to just sort of hunker down and do your comics thing and live the freelance way, or are you trying to get something more stable in animation and gaming and stuff like that?
I'll admit I'm a pretty privileged dude. I've got an amazing supportive family. My wife is working. We've got benefits through her now. It's dry right now out there for just animation jobs, let alone higher level jobs for like leadership, like directing, writing. Going out and pitching something is a little tricky unless I have the rights to My Little Pony or something. Like nobody's even going to really talk to you at this point. Yeah, I mean they will. It's a lot of like networking and keeping in touch with people and just kind of waiting to see until the bigger people with the bigger money make their decisions. So that said, I'm 50. I'm about to turn 51, and my wife and I kind of sat down. We had already kind of planned on leaving Pixar anyway. It's just at that point, we have a sophomore in high school, and we pay for his school. So we were like, let's get him through high school, and then I'll leave Pixar, and I'll just be a comic making hobo or whatever. Like I'll just do freelance. So that got accelerated by a couple years. So we're just adjusting to that.
Okay.
I think the trick is, I want to keep telling stories in the best, most appropriate way that those stories are asking to be told. Mm-hmm. So I'm stockpiling TV show ideas. I'm stockpiling movie ideas. I'm doing a little bit of art here and there. I don't really keep a sketchbook. I only usually draw if it's for something. So I'll do those drawings and put them in a folder and kind of collate things. But books I can do. So I'm starting to revamp and starting to like get the gears rolling on 2 or 3 different book projects. And I'm talking to some publishers about a couple of bigger license things and just waiting to see what's what. This thing that I did at Comic-Con this year to get back to the commissions, rather than doing commissions just to try to mix it up, I decided I'm not going to do commissions at Comic-Con. Ahead of time, I'm going to put out a call for submissions to writers who have never been published and have them send me 1-page stories. And they can buy the page. That'll be the commission, but I'll draw their story. And then I'll print a book of all those stories. And I got 150 submissions in like a week. And then I shut it down because I'm like, I can't do all of these. I doubt I'll be able to get 5 of them done at Comic-Con. I got like 6 or 7 pages done at Comic-Con. And those artists were there. And it was a whole different experience because it was this vibe of having a fan who's a writer, a creative who just hadn't been seen before. In most cases, hang out with an artist that they liked enough to want to do this with and talk about the process, watch me do the page, watch the thinking of like why I dropped a line or why I changed a shot that they had implied, or I could talk about why I thought it made the story better visually. Because we work in you guys know, it isn't a written medium. It's a visual medium. Like we work in this joined medium of different senses other than just written word. And film is the same way. A script is not a movie. It's a script. Right. It's the promise of what maybe a movie could be. So it was sort of an experience to kind of educate up and coming writers on like, if you're going to work with an artist, we work very differently than you work when we think of story. We add these other elements that you should keep in mind when you're writing, to think visually, to drop dialogue. You don't need that. Or you do need dialogue, or you can't make this big time jump without explaining X, Y, or Z in your story. Right. So I kind of wanted to get that across, but at the same time, I also wanted to see if I could kind of like with Trickster, like shift the paradigm of what you do at a convention and change what a commission could be, where I can still make money on the page. I get to meet another creative, and I'm going to reprint this as a book. So I'll get to, do all those things. And it just kind of hopefully that one little thing that could have been drawing a Wolverine on a comic book is now an original piece of comic art on a page. I met a writer who maybe helped them get a future job. They got exposure. So then it made me start thinking, like with Trickster, how do I get more eyes on this? How do I get more people to look at this? So I started inviting other creators. Like Jim wrote me a story. And maybe creators that don't just write sometimes. I'm like, I'm going to draw them all, but I want every page in this book to be a different writer. So I just pulled out the, all my contacts and started pinging people. And now it's an 80-page book. I'm going to put Shawn and Mattteo on the spot. I have 2 slots open.
Oh, there you go.
Do you guys want to write me a 1-page comic?
I'd love to do that. That'd be awesome.
I'll send you a few of the finished pages too, so you can kind of see them.
Yeah, please do. That'd be great.
I finished a couple yesterday. I can show you what they look like.
I'm excited about this project, man.
Yeah, this is exciting.
Beautiful.
Holy shit.
Oh, man, that's gorgeous.
So they're in sort of a sorry.
You're doing all the work oversized, man? It's bigger than 11 by 17?
Yeah, which is a pain in the ass to scan.
That looks awesome, man. That looks
so
beautiful.
I'm doing them as these kind of like Will Eisner-esque ink wash kind of thing.
That's
I love it.
It remember me immediately of that.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Good. And then Jose Villarubia is going to do color on them. So he's going to do a two-tone color process on every page. And he's writing one of the stories as well. But it's a crazy
all the stories are completely standalone. They have nothing to do with each other.
No, the only thing they have. So I needed to put some sort of set of rules. So the only rules are try to keep it under 6 panels. And if I go over that, that's on me. Be kind with the dialogue because I'm lettering with a brush on the page.
Nice.
And then as far as theme, I'm just looking at I'm calling it old timey sci-fi. So like bubble helmets and like Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers kind of stuff.
Perfect.
Or like old school noir, like guys with fedoras, any sort of crime, like whatever you want to do. Jim's is a little bit more like and if they come in and it feels like, I'll just put that twist on it. Like one of them came in and it was obviously supposed to be about a little, like a more modern day kid that's part of an exorcism. And I made it this like older guy with like a fedora, and his mom is not like a young hot mom. She's like this old Italian lady, like, Father, help my kid. He's possessed by the devil. So like I just aged it, I put it in the right aesthetic, tried to shift it to the aesthetic. So like with like Jim's is awesome and I won't have to do much to like shift that, but I'm having fun like with these writers and artists that are sending me stories that don't typically work in that style. And I'm going to change what they do. Like one of the writers, so like Jim's will be a good example. Dave McKean just sent me one, and Dave's will look like that. It won't look. I mean, Kent Williams is doing me one, and they're like, "This is awesome! Like I would never draw this or draw anything like this."
That's awesome.
I don't know if you guys know him, Jorge Gutierrez. He directed Book of Life and Maya and the Three on Netflix. He has a very strong, crazy style, very graphic. He trained under Maurice Noble as well, but like his stuff is very graphic. He works with Del Toro a lot. Del Toro produced Book of Life. So like his story that he sent in is about like a Mexican wrestler and like, like who's like a private eye kind of thing. Like, and
oh, that's fine.
I'll draw it in a way that won't look anything like his work. And he's excited about that. Like that's part of the fun is to like,
that's awesome.
Stretch a little differently than we normally would. But
and it's also the one I did it was just like, we're doing it Marvel method where I was like, here's just the idea. I don't know how many panels this is, but this is my idea. Like this happens and then this happens.
Yeah.
However you want to solve that. I don't want because dude, with you, it's like, you don't want to tell Scott what to do. You just want to, like you be you, and then you filter it through the Scott Morse lens and then make it your brilliant thing that you're going to make,
That's sweet.
That's the point.
What I loved about yours is it came in and it's like, there's this like very clear setup, very clear, like, here's the guy, here's the world, here's the thing he does. And then he changes space and time. And then some guys see him and are like, that guy's like, whatever. And it's like, so I have 2 panels to change space and time. how am I going to do that? Like, this is going to turn into a crazy Kirby experiment.
That's the magic of comics. It's the magic
That's
of
awesome.
But bro, you're like one of the best storytellers out there. Like people overanalyze like art and technique and what
Right.
someone's doing. Your whole career, whether it's building a puppet or drawing a comic book or working in animation, is based around brilliant storytelling. Is like the priority.
Oh, thanks,
is,
man.
you know, and your art is just the delivery system for that.
Yeah. I'd agree with Jim, and I'd say storyteller on the bigger level. Like when I think of storytelling on the smaller level, it's like, oh, panel to panel, you're a great storyteller. But I agree with Jim. Like on storytelling, when we speak of Scott, it's like it's a bigger level. It's the whole inception of story and the idea and concept and delivery. I agree, because everything I know of your work, Scott, is you're the single voice.
Yeah,
of the comic I've read.
Thanks, man. I mean, that's really sweet of you guys. And I'm glad, I mean, it heartens me to see that, like, that's how you look at it. And the word storyteller specifically, and I'll tell you, I've started using that as like job description, storyteller. And it like freaks me. It's like, what, do you do puppet shows at the carnival? And it's like, I do build puppets, but I'm not going to do a puppet show for you. They're built for camera. Like, yeah, I mean, I think the whole idea of like world building comes out of like working in movies and like my film background and holistically looking at this character, even like with a one-page story, like you guys send something in, I will think about what is this world around this one page? What's the stuff happening off page? What's the stuff happening before and after? What kind of world is this? Why is this character? Does a light bulb exist in this world? Does a light fixture exist? Like what informs everything in this world physically, but then also like philosophically and emotionally, like on a character level, like what's the thinking behind these? So my brain goes into all those places of like, this needs to feel as real as possible because it's real in my brain. Like it needs to make sense in my brain to kind of pass the test of like, will anybody buy this? And it's like, I feel like I'm trying to underline all the reasons why you should buy it by creating the world as best I can, like that immaculate reality of that world. The whole idea of like the merging of like typically not working with a writer or not writing for another artist to like, and this book is a very different experiment. I did just start doing it myself because I knew I could get it done if I did it myself and I wasn't gonna have to wait on somebody else. Like I wasn't gonna have to wrangle somebody. If it's just me, I can just kick my own ass and just go do everything. So I started writing Soulwind when I was like 19, like with that idea of just like, I'm just going to give myself this assignment. Right. And these are the rules.
That's a big one too.
And it got bigger than I wanted, but I'm like, I can, bite off small pieces and it'll eventually get done and it'll all be okay. And because I started with that kind of mindset, I started meeting all these like Jim and all these kind of indie guys, right? Like really, really early on. And I would gravitate to, even in high school, I'd gravitate to like Mike Allred and Mignola and Matt Wagner and like these different artists who would write and draw and got to know them. Like we all became friends. Like they saw that I was like, you're thinking a little differently than the kid that comes up and just wants a drawing of, MODOK or whatever. Like throwback to MODOK the other day.
It was a good callback. Good callback.
But this idea of storytelling, it wasn't really defined until I heard Matt Wagner talk. I think his second Mage story arc was just coming out like 25, 30 years ago. And he was at Golden Apple in Hollywood. And I went to like kind of go support. He was going to give a talk, like first issue was coming out or whatever. So I was in the back of the room. He's like, Scott, what's up? And I'm like, I'm just here to listen. So like somebody in the crowd asked him like, hey, you write and you draw. What do you like better? What do you think you're better at? And Matt's like, look, I'm not the best writer and I'm not the best artist. But I found that when I put the two together, I'm a really good storyteller. And like that right there was like somebody like took a 2x4 and hit me in the head. And I was like, holy shit, that's totally it. I don't have to be the best artist and I don't have to be the best writer, but I do need to work this magic trick in a way where you don't look at my art so long that you're picking it apart and you're not thinking about the story so much that you're enjoying the art. So like there's this way of hiding the cracks, like kind of taping over the seams.
Yep.
And keeping things loose and organic, that it's sort of like jazz. It's sort of like, I mean, I think that's why I gravitate to jazz or hip hop, or like, you know, there's this sort of like, keep it alive in the moment. Live music is very much that. It's like, you have to keep it alive in the moment. If you drop the ball, you're not juggling anymore. So like, how do you juggle this to completion and make it feel right? And I think that's storytelling. I think it's really great. Letting the images carry the story at some points, letting the words carry the story at some points. And then sometimes it's letting time carry the story. Like, and that's a film thing where you're pacing the story at a certain point, where if you're doing your job right, you're tricking the reader into moving from image to image quickly or slowly. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like you're forcing an edit rate of speed like you would in a movie or a TV show. So like, playing with time is a very big thing for me. And it's elusive. It's not anything. It's like, hey, did you do this shot in the movie? It's like, no, I didn't. I was kind of part of that. Like, it's an elusive thing. You don't see it on the page, but hopefully you feel it when you read. It's the experience of owning a book and reading a book.
That makes sense.
It's a crazy, I think weird, and I think crazy. I've recently found out that I'm likely ADHD. You know, at age 50, you learn these things, and it makes it makes a lot of sense as to why, like, you were asking earlier, like, or Jim was pointing out that like I was this kid that could like work in animation and also do books on the side. And it's like, it's just because honestly, I think it's just because I have this ADHD superpower of pivoting.
What clued you into discovering this at 50?
My therapist.
That'll do it.
You're ADHD.
A specialized doctor that immediately recognizes that.
I mean, I did like a formal test after that, just to kind of make just because I was curious, because this is the storytelling stuff. I'm like, I got to learn what makes you ADHD. Why is that a superpower? Why, like,
and to be honest with you, sorry to interrupt, Scott, but no, that's the thing that I was about to ask you, like, because you were just telling, not if you had ADHD, but and generally speaking, like you were talking about the fact that you started really young at 19, just doing books, and it's not easy to find somebody who has the focus ability to do that, because doing comics, especially, it's really like there's a lot of people that don't have the discipline to do it. And you were keeping saying, okay, so I'm doing this and this and that, and then I was doing this and this and that. Like, Jesus, like, you had a great discipline since the early days, and now we found out that it's not called discipline.
It's not discipline. It's not discipline. Some people who don't have ADHD, and honestly, I think we probably all do, like some people, or some level of it, right? Like, I think any creative person, anybody who can live in another world and juggle that world in their brain. Yeah. That's it. That's the H. That's the hyper part of the ADHD. Yeah. Okay. It isn't that you're like, ha, 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 I just had a Coke and I'm crazy. No. Like, it isn't hyper like that. It's like, not like 3-year-old hyper where they're going to run up and hit their friend because they like them so much. Like, it's not that. Your brain is hyper in that you're actually jumping through time and space to multiple places at once. It's almost like you're dimension hopping in space, to the point that you're not present in the room. It's this whole idea of like mindfulness and meditation of be present. It's like, I can't be present. I'm ping ponging all over the place because I'm in that world, or I'm in comics, or I'm thinking about a movie I want to do, or shit, I'm thinking about this thing I did as a kid, and now I'm living in the past, and now I'm thinking about my dad.
And also it's so exciting when you're in that zone that the reality is way less attractive, that sometimes like your own body is asking you to go back there because it's more enjoyable being in that, in that state of excitement. I'm experiencing that, especially now that I have a kid. I have a 3 years old. And and sometimes I find it really hard to be present, be in the moment, because the moment is being there with this little creature that that makes games that don't make any sense. It just wants me to be there and listen to his boring games that he does, because it's still boring, to be honest with you. Like, it's going to be more interesting probably, and it's going to be 5 or 6 or 7. It's going to be more interesting. But now it's just boring, So and so I can feel my brain like, hey, Mateo, come over here. Come over here in this other fun corner when you're thinking about your book, the next show you're gonna be doing, the next project you're gonna be thinking of. So yeah, I totally agree with you. It's definitely something.
Yeah, I mean I have two boys as well. I have two kids. They're both sophomores. One's a sophomore in high school, one's a sophomore in college now. Mm-hmm. And all I can tell you is that 3-year-old is you're gonna learn to be a dad of a different aged kid. And it's the first time you've ever done that for every age of their life. Like this is the first time I'm the father of a 19-year-old. This is the first time I'm the father of that particular 15-year-old. Like I was the father of a 15-year-old before, but not that 15-year-old. That's a different kid.
Right.
And they're always different. And it isn't that like they're doing things that are boring. They're just doing things that you're not interested in that moment. And it's hard to like pivot your interest back to what they're doing. And I beat myself up for like, man, am I wasting? Are they observing me being an asshole? Like not being present with them.
I know that feeling.
But then
I've had that.
Then there's this other thing that you don't think about where they're so proud of what you do that they're telling their friends when you're not around, like, and you are inspiring them. You just didn't know it. You're inspiring them by thinking about your story or by doing your thing or doing something else. But you're not engaging with them about it. And that's the hard part.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But
I do want to, I want to get into Trickster because I mean, we're having such a good talk. Time's going by, but explain what, so you and Jim were you do San Diego. What caused you to want to create Trickster? Explain what it is and where it came from.
Me and a couple of friends at Pixar, Ted Mathot, and my friend Jeff Pigeon's wife, Anita Coulter. We were talking about conventions, and we realized, much like we were talking about earlier, that there's like Read and like Fan Expo, there's these companies, and like Comic-Con was kind of the big offender at the time. They've gotten a little better. Where the show wasn't really about comics anymore. It was starting to become about movies and TV shows and Hall H. Right. And there's Tobey Maguire in a trying to hide in a Spider-Man costume. And Tarantino's running by our booth and we're heckling him. And, things like that are happening. And it's like, I don't know how to talk to my friends, my comics friends anymore. And our fans can't get to us because of this line for this weird free item on Thursday morning that's happening at Hasbro or whatever. Like
so silly.
Weird shit.
It was becoming a clown show. It was becoming
a clown show.
Yeah. So skyscrapers in downtown San Diego wrapped in ads for Scott Pilgrim, and no disrespect to Brian O'Malley. We love him, but that was kind of the telltale sign of oh, this is not about artists anymore. This is commerce, and LA and Hollywood have taken over. And we were living in LA at the time, so it's like I see the billboards every day of my life for these shitty Hollywood movies. I don't want to go to my Comic-Con in San Diego and see the same shit. This is supposed to be our thing, comics, art, us doing, and it was kind of a blatant takeover. Yeah. And sorry to interrupt, Scott, but
no, you're not interrupting at all. I mean, the other aspect of it was like, you guys know, it's the other stuff that happens in San Diego. It's the hanging out and eating and having a drink and listening to music or live art. So we started thinking like, how do we do all that, but not have to deal with being on the convention floor? Let's be at the convention, but not on the convention floor. Let's set up across the street. We found a wine bar that wasn't really being used for anything other than distribution at the time. The guy, we found out later, it wasn't the guy that owned the bar. It was the guy managing the bar. Cut us a deal for the week, $10,000 for the week. And I'm like, well, the booth is $5,000. Fuck, this is awesome. We get a whole building for ourselves, and it's right across the street from the convention.
Dude, that first year, the location was perfect. The location was the key, because you could just say, we're directly across the trolley tracks from Comic-Con. You can see the building Trickster's in when you walk out of the convention center. It was brilliant. It was incredible.
Yeah. So the idea was to take Artist Alley and put it there.
Yeah.
But to do it in a way where the artists wouldn't have to be there if they didn't want to be. So you can still have your booth, your con table and in the con, because a lot of fans aren't going to know what the hell Trickster is. They're going to have to find it word of mouth. But why don't we set up Trickster so that your work can be there? We'll set up a shop. It'll be a consignment shop. So Anita ran the shop where, you guys could drop off 20 copies of your book. We'd throw it into the system. People could come up and buy it just like it was Barnes and Noble. But then we would also announce signing times where you will be at the bar or where you will be at hanging out at Trickster tonight at whatever time. We're going to release a print. We're going to do a little gallery show on Saturday. Tom Morello is going to play on Saturday. Mike Allred's band's going to play. We're going to do life drawing every night. So so then we started thinking about, well, let's get some sponsors for some of this stuff. So we got a couple of sponsors here and there, smaller things. But it blew up, and pretty soon Criterion was helping out with like the Kurosawa art show, or like, we had an actual book printer, like not a publisher, a printer, a place where self-publishers could find out, where do I print my hardcover in China? It's like, well, let's have a point person for that here at the show so we can talk about that. Let's do not panels. Let's make them sexier. Let's call them symposiums, and we'll sell tickets to them. So you don't pay to come into Trickster. But if you want to listen to Mike Mignola talk about Hellboy for 2 hours, you're going to pay $20, and you're going to get a drink, and you're going to get a free book or a print at the end of it. So, and we can only have 40 people. So we're making it special, right, for you to be there. Right. So we started word of mouth that way, where we started making it these little. It was sort of like pro-con mixed with, these elements of things we've done in the past. We were just trying to change how we did it. We didn't expect it to steal all of the business from the Hyatt bar. We didn't expect it to steal and piss off. We did the leadership at Comic-Con. We didn't expect.
Yeah,
we didn't do it with that intent.
I was about to ask you. Like, did you have any pushback for this thing? Did people start to get pissed? Yeah.
That was the punk part of it. That's what made it so fun, especially. Yeah.
We had advocates. We had, Jim, I'll call him out because he's a sweet man, and he was trying to play the peacekeeper between, the mafia and this startup street hood who's trying to take over the business on that corner. Bob Chapman pulled me aside and he's like, I love it. I love what you're doing, man. I love it all. This is comics. This is what we want. This is how it's got to be. We haven't done it this way in a long time. This is what we want. But you got to make nice. You got to go. We're going to have to go kiss the ring. We got to go talk with Comic-Con. And it's like, we'll talk with them. He's like, no, we got to do it today, man. You got to go over there and talk. It's like,
oh yeah.
I had friends that were like, don't shit where you sleep kind of thing. We didn't intend to do that. And I think it all blew over in the end, and it was fine. But at the same time, I think that it was good for the bigger machine to see we're pissed. We're pissed to the point that we're packing 30,000 people into a 300 person area at night. We had so many people coming through Trickster that it was ridiculous. It was literally standing room only. Mm-hmm. And it could have really only worked that 1 year, because the next year we tried to get that space again, found out that the guy that rented it to us wasn't supposed to be renting it to us. And they charged $50,000. They were charging $30,000 a day the next year I think it was Sega or somewhere.
Sega, that's right.
Paid it. And it was dead. Nobody went over there for anything. So we pushed Trickster farther and farther out over the next 2 years, and it just became less and less visible, less and less known. It was such an easy thing to get to that first year that I think it impressed a lot of people.
Yeah. The first year was magical, man, and there was a feeling in the air being at Trickster, like, this is something special, this is something fun, and slightly rebellious, that the artists were just like, we're just going to sort of rebel. And then, but since we're not charging to get into Trickster, technically we're not taking business away from Comic-Con. We just so happen to be doing our own convention across the tracks from Comic-Con on the same weekend. It's a pure coincidence. It's just, it's capitalism. It's like, we just decided to do the same weekend. And to me, in my mind, there's this urban legend of you having to meet up with the leaders of Comic-Con or whatever and explaining this of well, we just wanted to have our own thing on the same weekend across the street. No big deal. We're not taking money out of your pocket technically, but yes, we did convince Mike Mignola and other big time legends to leave their tables. and they're part of this new like freer movement. It's just, and I feel
that was
like,
the thing. It wasn't exclusive to the, like, people didn't come to Trickster exclusively. Like, creators weren't there exclusively, except for even me. I think that was the year that, like, I still paid for my booth at Comic-Con.
Yes.
It's just we gave it to the guys that were doing the T-shirts. Who was that?
The Brothers
Inc. We gave it to Brothers Inc. that year.
Yeah.
So they were selling T-shirts.
Did you have a sign at your table that says "I'm across the street at Trickster"?
I think at Alan's booth, I think we said like
someone. Yeah, I remember hearing
people were
about
saying
that.
he's a Trickster. Yeah,
and I think there
what
was
year was this?
2010 was the first year, right, dude?
10 or 12. Brave had just come out, I think. So 2012
was the biggest one.
The first one.
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah, I remember going to that.
Because Scott, I feel like after the first Trickster that we sort of got blacklisted for a couple of years by Comic-Con. Like, or was that also a fantasy of mine where I feel like Jackie Estrada, I'll just say their names, they were like pissed off at us. And I never knew any of them anyway. They're the old guard of San Diego.
Yeah.
And it's like, I was never ever officially invited to be at San Diego as a guest. We always had to pay for a table. So I felt like, even though San Diego is where I met Bob and got my big break working on Clerks, and I met you guys, and it was wonderful for the beginning of my career, I felt like San Diego never really extended an arm out to me.
They've never extended anything to me either, and I've gone there for 30 years. I've paid for that. In some way, I've paid for a booth for 30 years. Like,
right.
And it's fucking expensive. Like, San Diego is not an easy thing to do.
Definitely.
Hotels are expensive, more and more expensive every year.
I stopped doing it. It just got to be like the cost of it was so crazy, and the benefits I got from it made no sense.
Well, I mean, it was
like, I'm done with this show.
So to answer the question about like Jackie's good. We're good. She's very sweet. And I think they were confused, and it was more that, and I think this is what Chapman was trying to get to me with, was like, there was no discussion of the fact that this was going to happen with them. And because they're the presence, they're the draw down there, even though they're a nonprofit. We didn't do anything technically wrong where we, stole business from them or where we took something out of their pocket. What we didn't do was the like more compassionate thing of talking with them as if they were friends. And that's the blur, right? This gets back to Pixar versus other studios. There's this weight that comes with working with your friends, or it's worse when a company or a business gives you the impression that you're family, or tries to perpetuate this atmosphere or this culture of we're all a family here, right? And Comic-Con, comics, yeah, we are a family. You guys are family to me. Like, but at the same time, like, that means you can rely on me in certain situations, but that I don't feel obligated to show up at your house at Thanksgiving. Like, I don't feel obligated to do things for you. And there's an obligation that comes with the word family, or this feeling of family, and this like presumption that you have to play by the rules of the patriarch or the matriarch in Comic-Con's case, or whatever. That's wrong. There's I always like to refer to, there's been a lot of mafia talk. Sorry, Mattteo. Throwing this your way.
He's offended by it.
But I always think about, in The Godfather, Tom Hagen tells Sonny Corleone, like, so the Don is shot, right? And he's in the hospital, and Sonny's like now Sonny's in charge, and he's like, I'm going to go fucking kill those guys. And it's like, Tom's trying to calm him down. He's like, Sonny, it's business, not personal.
Right.
They shot him. It was a business decision. I don't like it any more than you. You can't go flying off the handle and killing people because they made a business decision. Yeah, it's the mafia, and there's that gray line of like, you're trying to kill somebody. So like, it's more than a business decision, but it is a business decision when you look at it that way from Tom Hagen's point of view. And it's the same thing with what we do. It's business. It's not personal. If like my book falls off the slate at a publisher, that's business. It's not personal.
Right.
If Scholastic isn't going to promote my book that's coming out at the same time as one of Raina Telgemeier's books coming out, they're going to promote Raina's book. They don't need to. Raina's got a bigger audience than me. They should be promoting my book. But like, that's a business decision for them. They only have so many resources. They only have so much money they can spend on their artists for the books that are coming out that month. Was it a bad move to release those books against each other? Probably. Like,
are you going to kill them all? Probably.
No, I'm not gonna, probably no. Don't bait me on the podcast. Yeah, I mean, but it's that sort of thing. It's like I can't, even like with Pixar, I can't get mad at a company. Like that's like yelling at a wall. Like it's a business decision. Right. There's more than one person involved here, and even the people you think are to blame aren't wholly to blame. They may have been complacent, but then that's on them. Or complicit, I guess. Sorry, wrong $5 word. That's on them not sticking up for you. Like that was a choice they made, and it was maybe an unprofessional choice or a bad choice in my mind, but a good choice in their mind based on how they're running their business. So like I can't. As I get older and kind of mature, I try to think about these things from a business point of view and not a personal point of view. And choose to do my it's that fine line of us living the wild life of freelancers. How do we do the personal stuff on a business level, right? Because we're trying to make personal shit.
That's the whole challenge. That's the big, issue that all freelancers are going to have to face. That individually you have to figure that out. It's like, well, you're a visionary. You got your own thing you want to do. How do you apply that in business terms or money making terms? That's on you. There's really no blueprint for specifically how to do that. That's each artist has to figure that out. That's the challenge, man. That challenge never goes away over a career.
For example, Jim's tactics is just adding $5 to commissions. Now we got to $25,000 a piece.
My secret's been revealed on this podcast. It's just every 6 months raise it by $5.
But really, that's clever. Even seeding it into this podcast, because now there's an incentive for people to buy it at the next convention because it's $5 cheaper than the next one.
Yeah.
So like you should buy it now.
Yeah. All right, guys, we've done our hour. Well, Scott,
real quick. Can I just, the businessman in me has to say this.
Do your thing.
Scott, as far as current projects go, you have been putting out books currently with Scholastic. There's been the Magic Pickle reprints in full color. There was Dugout, your brilliant zombie baseball book.
Right.
Is there other stuff you can kind of pimp and promote as far as people?
Let me grab a copy of Magic Pickle real quick. Hold up.
Yes, please. Yes,
absolutely.
This is good stuff.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
so this literally just came out, and it's a new book, brand new.
Dude, I love that cover. Like that is burned in my brain the first time I saw it. Go ahead.
But it's a new hardcover. Just came out from Scholastic. Nobody would know because they had other books come out the same month. But that's the latest
send
thing.
us a file with that cover so we can have our editor Jamie put it on the screen.
Good call, Mattteo.
I'll send you that, and I'll send you some of the stuff
and links for everything.
Yeah, we'll put
and
it
then
all.
the book. Yeah, and then there's the thing I'm working on right now. This Ink Runs Cold is what it's called. The commission turned book thing that we were talking about, the one-pagers.
Nice.
Yep.
And I'm working on a couple of other graphic novels that I'm finding homes for right now. One of them's called, and I'll send you images for this too. One's called The Murder of Make-Believe. That is about, the big idea. It's not about Walt Disney, but what if Walt Disney was under the influence of the last living fairies when he created the Magic Kingdom Empire back in the 30s?
Oh, wow.
But it's the last living fairies because the Nazis knocked them out first, took out that culture first, and the last one is on the run and is trying to get the story of their people out, and they're going to use animation to do it. It's a crazy idea. It's kind of this murder mystery set in the 1930s around the premiere of what would have been a Snow White kind of movie. So I'm working on that. And then another book I just started talking with a publisher about, but it isn't locked, so I won't say who the publisher is, called World War Witch, that takes place in World War II, but has to do with a witch that's being weaponized by the government.
That's awesome.
That's
amazing.
That's awesome.
Sort of a secret weapon, and all the kind of trials and tribulations that kind of comes with that. She's been used in various wars secretly, but nobody knows it's the whole kind of moral debate of, can I use an enslaved witch as a weapon?
Wow.
And
Yeah.
when is that going to backfire?
That's great.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So I'm working on those.
All
Sounds
well,
awesome.
thank you.
Some
That's
other
it?
things that I can't talk about.
Only 75 books, Scott.
12 projects.
Come on.
Yeah.
I'm so
There's a couple
disappointed
other
right
things
now.
that I'm super excited about.
Okay.
I can't say anything about. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming
movies
on.
and TV show ideas. So still
Awesome.
pumping that stuff out too.
Yeah,
That's awesome, man.
You just don't stop. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Scott. This was awesome.
Yeah, it was a
And,
great pleasure. Absolutely.
I really appreciate, and I'm humbled that you guys would even ask. So I
Oh, well,
Love all three
I
of
probably
you.
will ask you
Yeah.
again in the near future because I want to talk about cell vinyl and painting and all that fun
yeah,
stuff.
dude,
too.
like that's
yeah.
that's cell vinyl right there. Cell vinyl.
Yeah, I see it. I see it.
That's Hellboy whiskey right there. It's disgusting. Don't drink it. It's gross.
All right, Mateo, you wanna take us out of here, bro?
This is the Inkpulp podcast.
1986. A masked vigilante stalks the streets of Freak City, seeking final vengeance against his evil rogues gallery. Defective Comics presents Savage Street Vigilante. An over-the-top, creator-owned, superhero parody comic book unlike any other. From band favorite artistic sensation, Jim Mafood. 48 pages of pure, glorious destruction. Launching October 1st on Kickstarter.